Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Anika Apple podcast. I'm glad you joined me today for a great conversation around community. And we're going right back to what came through in the divine guidance around reciprocation as our core topic today. And I'm going to share with you some ways for you to consider how to show up in community in ways that are really beneficial both for you and those around you. But first, a message from my heart to yours. As I was preparing for this episode, what came up really clearly is that it is time for you to know and remember that you are deeply loved. And I know you're like on the surface, yeah, I know. But do you really know? When times are hard and we are facing an immense amount of challenges and there are things changing all around us, and we're not where we want to be, or perhaps we are where we want to be, but we think the scenery looks a little bit different than we expected. Maybe there are challenges that we were not anticipating, or perhaps there's not as much challenge as we were looking forward to. Whatever it might be, sometimes we will have these moments where we feel like we're not held, we're not loved, we're not seen. That maybe the divine has forgotten about us or stopped communicating with us. And it's in those moments that it's really important for you to dig a little bit deeper, to ask yourself, seeking the truth inside of you, for what's here, what's present in this moment. I know in my journey that when I've had those moments, it has often been because God was pulling me closer to hear, know, and recognize my own voice, to understand the way that God operates in and through me, to deepen my discernment and my understanding of my gifting. It was in those moments that things were being sharpened, that I was being prepared for what was next. And it was really easy to look at those moments and make an assumption that maybe I just wasn't enough. Maybe God changed their mind about me. Maybe, all of the different things. So I want to deliver this message to you on today and remind you that you are deeply loved and held. That your journey matters, your impact is great, and that you are so very important. That if you never did another thing in this lifetime, you would still be so very important. And I want to encourage you to take some time across this week and the months ahead to make sure that you are pouring back into yourself, that you are loving on you in the way that you deserve and the way that you desire. A lot of times we are so focused on getting it from the external sources, including our relationship with God, that we forget that we have the precious ability to give it to ourselves. And this doesn't look like the things on the surface. I'm not talking about just taking yourself out for a nice dinner, although that's important as well. But I'm talking about your soul care. Giving yourself time to be quiet, affirming how much you love yourself, how grateful you are for the journey, how appreciative you are for all of the parts of your body that allow you to get up and keep going every single day. It's in those challenging times that we remember to have gratitude about the core of who we are. And when we do that, then we are not so easily moved when titles and things change, when resources shift, when opportunities change. We're not moved by that in the same way. Coming back into the center and the truth of who you are is always going to be one of the greatest foundations for a remarkable life. And I desire that for you as much as I create that for myself. And that is my message this week from my heart to yours. So I'm excited to get into the episode today and to talk about community. And for those of you that did not listen to the April Divine Guidance yet, I definitely encourage you to go back to it. It was power-packed, a full hour of insight flowing through from God, lots of different themes. And one of the big themes was about community. Very specifically, what was coming through was this intention around us creating reciprocal relationships in community. We want to be in community with one another. and contribute in a way where there is a beautiful give and take. I think one of the things that happens a lot of the time is that we then believe that it has to be an equal measure. In any kinds of relationship, there's always going to be an ebb and flow. There are going to be times where you're going to have more to give and times where you feel like you have less to give. There are going to be times where you really need to be in silence and quiet. There are going to be times where you need to be reserved. There are going to be times where you just feel like you exist to pour into and support others. And all of that is well. Being a part of community means seeing what the needs are and looking at your capacity to step in and be the resource, to be the solution. And sometimes the solution is finding other people who can be in support for one another. It's not always about you pouring out. It's also about you being in a posture to receive, which is one of the big things that I think is important for us to consider as we strengthen the communities that we have around us now. For many people, there's a difficulty receiving. They have a hard time allowing themselves to really truly receive from others. I had not thought about receiving as something that takes practice, a skill even. But there's an unwinding of mindsets and behaviors that are connected to your ability to receive, especially if you have had some traumas around this in the past, or you have wrestled with your self-esteem or worthiness. There are many different reasons why it might be difficult for you to receive from people. One of the things that I think is a real hack is this, that a lot of times people who give very freely and often find themselves in places of resentment, right? Because when they're giving, their giving might not be from a totally pure place. There may be some part of giving that is a desire to receive, a watching to see whether or not they're going to give it back. And when you have built a relationship of giving in that way with expectancy of receiving something back, then it may be more difficult for you to receive, because when you're on the receiving end, you're wondering, is this because the person's then going to turn around and want something from me? Like, what is going to happen? Or you might be in the habit of wanting to immediately give something in return for whatever is being given to you. In the seasons that God has moved us into, we are going to be the recipients of much favor. And as we receive favor, we will also be able to give in ways that are meaningful for that person and aligned with who you are. So that means if you look for kind of a tit for tat type of relationship, it's going to be difficult to maintain that. And you're likely going to exhaust yourself trying to do it, because what it is that you are called to give or contribute is going to be something that is easeful for you. The other thing that I think it's important for us to realize is that often what God puts us in posture to deliver for others is about strengthening our own skill set and gifting. So it may be an opportunity for people to see you in a certain light where they hadn't considered you before, because they did not know the expansiveness of what it was that you're called to give and contribute to the world. And the other thing that is absolutely true is that sometimes people just see you and they know what you need and they want to pour into you. And you want to be poured into. So when you're on the receiving end, you might think about whether or not you really want to receive. And if you do, what are the behaviors, patterns, what are the mindsets that you can shift to avoid pushing away what it is that someone is trying to pour into you? And on the giving side, it's important to consider the true intention behind what you are giving and why. And when there are things that need to have disclaimers, having the good, honest, upfront conversation before you're giving whatever it is. Some of you might be thinking right now, like, well, what does she mean? What are we giving in these communities, in these spaces? A lot of times there are opportunities to contribute what you do, the things that you are naturally gifted to do. For example, maybe in your community, in your group, there are several people with, elementary school age children, and someone absolutely loves nurturing children in that age. They might be the ideal person to do a drop off or an evening out. They might be someone who comes and spends time with you and also spends time with your kids. Whatever it is that looks like, you want to ensure that there is a value that you are also thinking about contributing back to that person. It's so that there is a balance, right? The reciprocation is like, yes, this person may love children, but it doesn't mean that every date night they should have your kids. And if it does, what is it that they need in return? It's very easy to be in a place where you have felt overwhelmed, stressed, depleted, where you are that person maybe in every other part of your life. Maybe you are that in your home, you are that in your work, you are that in some of the other circles that you're in. And so maybe in your inner circle, it's the only place where you feel like you can really let your hair down and just be. And that's good. Good that you have a space where you can let your hair down and just be. And know that in some season, even if it is not the immediate season, that you will have time where God will call upon you to pour into others, to support them. And it's important that we recognize, we look for the ways that we can easily contribute. The reciprocation in community is not just simply about this moment. It's not just simply about what's happening today and in the next, 6 months or so. This is about building a community, a foundation of trust and love where integrity exists, where there's a cognizance about what people need and how you can best support them. This kind of building of community is going to sustain us through so many different ups and downs and challenges that we'll experience over the years to come. And so it's really important to build it from a place where the relationships are solid. And you get there by being able to receive, allowing yourself to receive, and also by contributing in ways that are really meaningful. The beauty of this message is that it's also easeful, and I love that. Because if everyone does the things that they are really gifted to do, then the needs will be met. And where there are places where there may be gaps to something that the group needs, there's the opportunity for the community to consider whether or not there's someone else they want to invite in. Or maybe someone is deciding to learn a particular skill or to strengthen a gift so that they can contribute in those ways. I think it is also important for us to think about what it looks like to really be present for one another. Some things happen in relationships, particularly in groups, where there can be an assumption that, well, if this person is holding space for them, that no one else is needed. And what do I mean by holding space? I mean by being present and listening, supporting based on what the needs of the individual are, not what you want to give them, right? So sometimes we will rush in like, I am a solver. My friends know me to be a solver. You've got a problem. You want to come up with 5911 solutions. You go to Anika because I will be ready. I like the challenge of solving a problem. I have to call my attention back to asking the question first of what do you need in this moment? Because sometimes a person's not ready for a solution. Sometimes they don't want you to be a part of creating the solution. Sometimes all they need is just a person to see them and witness them, to listen, to hold their hand, to encourage them to go for a walk, to take off their earrings and let them know that in case they need to go handle some business, they're ready. But seriously, people want to know that you're in it for them. And being present means being able to be in the moment, focused and listening to what they're saying, not distracted by all the things that are going on in your head. So herein lies a difficult, the difficult challenge that we often find ourselves in. Well, someone needs me in this moment and I don't know that I can be present because I have a big presentation, or because I've got some things going on with my children, or maybe there's something happening with my partner and I don't feel like I can be present for them. Then say that. We make this thing so much more complicated. We all are experiencing life. Sometimes you need to take care of yourself first. Sometimes taking care of yourself is the only answer. And so being able to say, like, I love to be there for you, and the best that I can offer is this. Or in this moment, what is it that you need? Because I think I can support you in this way. Would that work for you? And these things, these statements probably feel really simple and obvious to you, but in the moment, sometimes we waffle at what to say and what to do because there's emotion there. So thinking about who you want to be and the ways in which you want to show up in community with others, how you want to be present for them, it's important to think about in advance, because it will help you in the moment where there is challenge or even tragedy. You'll be clear about who you are and the way in which you want to show up. But being present and active is really important. You may not fit whatever it is that others desire from you, and that's the second part of this, to not be sacrificial. But you should be really clear about what it looks like to you to be present and to hold yourself to that, to be accountable to what you say you're going to do and what the desired outcome that you want from your presence to be. So let's talk about not being sacrificial. I think a lot of times what happens is that we find ourselves in these moments where we are holding space for one another, and it's like, oh, I'll just put all of the other things that I have going on to the side. And for some people, especially those who are called to help support others, who are empathic, who just have a natural desire to care and nurture for others, right? We can often find ourselves in these situations where you're just pouring out. And then you come up for air and you're like, oh my gosh, but now I have all these things to do, or I didn't take care of myself in this way and give myself what I needed. So what does it look like for you to heal the relationship with jumping in and solving, instead to pull back and say, here's what I know I can do, and these are the other things that I'm committed to do for myself? What does it look like for you to take care of your needs first? What would it look like for you to make a decision that in whatever way you're going to support others, you're doing it from a place where you're full, so you're thinking first about your capacity and recognizing, yes, I have more than enough to pour out and I can be present. Sometimes, again, just like I was saying earlier, the solution can be you identifying somebody else that can be present for them. And that's a beautiful thing to do, to tap someone else on the shoulder and say, hey, I think that this person needs support. And I know that right now I don't have the capacity. Is that something that you think you could do? That's what community looks like. We shouldn't have an expectation to sacrifice ourselves for each other. We've done that, and it's not boded well for any of us. And so we have to change that dynamic with thinking that the only way to be there for others means sacrificing ourselves, because it doesn't. And the more that you contract and you create clarity in your communities, your circles, the easier it will be for you to do that. You see, when we are all in it for each other, we recognize that every single one of us is on a journey. We're on a journey to heal, to grow, we're transforming, we're elevating. There are all these beautiful things happening in our lives. And we have the opportunity to really stand for each other, cheering and congratulating and desiring like what's best, the best and highest outcomes for one another. But what goes awry is when people don't have those conversations about what is needed, about what they desire from others. So then there can be no contracting. And what we go back to the divine guidance episode, when God was talking about it being reciprocal, God was not saying, I want you to lay yourself, on the line for others. And so I want you to love them. I want you to look at the ways in which it is natural for you to give. I want you to listen to your peers, to your friends, to your circle, and ask, What is it that they really need? And then identify the ways in which you can support that. That's what being in community is all about. I think one other place where we go awry is that we will hold back from being fully honest. In the communities that are successful as we continue to navigate the challenges up ahead, they will be a place of safety, trust, integrity, and honesty. And that is not always easy. Sometimes we might find that it's difficult to say the things that you never said before. If you're in a community of folks that you have been around for a long time, you might experience this, right? Where you're changing and you're evolving, and now what it is that you used to do no longer serves you. You've recognized perhaps it's a pattern, perhaps it's a behavior, perhaps it is just a skill that you have that everyone leverages. Maybe you are the person who's really great at supporting those children, right? Who was the drop-off on date night for all of the friends, right? And maybe you're like, I can't do that anymore because I need to have these times for my own whatever, my own endeavors, my own joy-seeking things, right? And it's still okay for you to say that. You're right. I have always been this person. I know you. I know that you know me to be this person who shows up in this way for you and for our community. However, in the space that I am in now, in this moment in time, what I really need to prioritize right now is, and the more that you normalize this kind of honesty and sharing and consistency of behavior and reciprocation, the easier it is for people to adjust when things need to change. I can tell you one of the things that personally I've wrestled with in this space is the shift in going from being the, corporate HR exec with all of the business and people experience, right? To give people ideas on strategy and things like that, to really understanding my gifting, to working in a business that is centered in my gifting. And a lot of times I still feel the same kinds of calls that are like, I need your advice on this. But now that I am known for having that divine insight, it's like, can you tell me about this, right? And what I find is that it's really difficult for me in those communities to say, yes, and I'd love to support you. And this is also what I do for a living, right? And one of the things that's really interesting about this, and I would encourage you to think about how this might show up in your own life or experience, is that time that you take away from something that you would be doing that is revenue generating for you, for your business, that is time that you spend with your family, that is maybe contributing to running your household. That is all time that is really important, right? So community is very important. We know we want a reciprocal community, and we know that we have all of these other things. I don't want to call them competing priorities because I think when we find the right equation that they're very complementary. But let's say you're navigating through this challenge. The way that you get through it is by having the honest conversations. I'm wrestling with wanting to be there for you, and I also recognize that this is something that I do. I have a really good friend, and I remember having this moment where I was talking to them about something. I approached them from a friend perspective, like, hey, can you, just witness me in this? It was not even like necessarily asking them for something that they're skilled at. And in our conversation, it kind of morphed and melded over into what could be something that they could offer as a part of what they do for their work. And they said to me, I'd really love to support you more in this. And if you'd like to set up time with me, I'd be more than happy to do that. And I got to be honest, and I can share the story because I have had the honest conversation with her as well, that I was like, wait a minute, I came to you as my friend, right? And I was looking for you just to be able to hear me and to listen. And I was not looking for your professional, expertise or anything like that. I didn't ask you even for advice. And so how did we get to this place where it's like, hey, if you want to set up some time with me? And it was so interesting. Of course, you probably have the question of like, well, what did you do? I booked a session, clearly. Like, I booked the time because I knew that whatever it was that I needed in that moment that I couldn't see, that they did. And I am a really big believer that in what people do in their area of expertise, that there should be an exchange. And so when it morphed from this is simply friendship into now this is something that I really can do for you in a way that I can help you see something that might be even more difficult for you to accept as my friend. But knowing that I'm telling you this because I'm sitting in my professional capacity, there is an understanding and appreciation for it that maybe is different. Perhaps it was simply divine that in the moment, God was like, what Anika really needs from you right now is to spend some time with you so that she can unpack this in a way that what she receives is not just love from someone in her network, but it's actually some actionable things that are going to help her move through what she's navigating in this moment. The latter is what happened in my experience, and that may or may not be what happens to you. But I want to encourage you to find the ways to have that conversation when those things come up. I am blessed to have quite a few doctors in my network. And I think about things sometimes that I'm like, oh, this would be a great question for them. But I always want to respect the boundary that that is what they do as a profession, right? At the same time, when I think about my gifting, I don't necessarily relate my gifting in the same way. And what's funny is in my head, I would say, well, comes so natural to me because it's God flowing through me, like it's present. And so it's just there. But so is the wisdom and knowledge that they went to school to develop and the experiences that they have had that have strengthened that skill so that they are experts in their areas of expertise, right? So when a community sees each other as experts and understands what each person's area of expertise is, they can honor that for one another. And the community can come together and decide how they want to support each other, or individuals can contract that separately. But there should be some conversation before it gets to a place where it feels like people are leaning on expertise as a part of the community, and it does not feel like there's a fair or balanced exchange for what they're contributing. I'm not saying it's an easy conversation. Clearly, I shared with you that I've had my own battles with this, right? But I will tell you that it's important because part of what we are to do in community are share skills. And so there is an opportunity for you to be really clear about what are the things that you are giving into the community and what are the things that really are a part of what you need to keep back because it is the way in which you earn a living, or it is something very specific that you need to manage in a certain way. I would tell you that you probably already know where I'm going with this, that the discernment on what those things are and what it looks like, a great place to explore that is in conversation with God. Let God show you. I know for me that particularly in my gifting, I am grateful that I've had so many opportunities to share my gifting with others because it has helped me strengthen my relationship to my gift, my recognition of who I am, and also to create space for people to know who I am and what I do. And so I want to encourage you to develop this relationship with being really honest about both what you need and what you want to give. And also the places where there are boundaries that need to be set, because those are important too. Being in community doesn't mean not honoring yourself. It means honoring yourself and the balance of the community. And good boundaries are great for everyone. And that takes me into the last topic I wanted to highlight as you're building and strengthening your community, and that's around authenticity. Now, listen, I know authenticity is an overused word, that we use it too much, that people say it and it has become watered down. So insert whatever definition, whatever word it is that you want for this definition, which is showing up as yourself truly and fully. In community, there can be a propensity to lean on being a certain way, creating a certain kind of energy. Everyone loves to go to the movies. So every Saturday, every Saturday of the month, you get together and go to a movie together, and you hate going to the movies. Why go? Sometimes we allow ourselves to be in situations and circumstances and thinking that by morphing ourselves into what the status quo is, that somehow it will keep us relevant in the community. I can tell you that when people aren't present for things, they are as much missed as the people who are there are enjoyed. Because in real community, you don't have to be there all the time. There's something about being in the truth of who you are, which allows people to get to know you and understand what to expect. And granted, I know that as you continue to grow, and particularly when you are on your healing journey, that you are learning more and more about yourself all the time. So tell them. One of the most powerful gifts that we have is the opportunity to say to people, I'm changing. I know I used to do that. I used to like this, but now I realize I really don't as much. And so this is actually what works better for me, or I really enjoy having these kinds of experiences. Or I wrestle with having this kind of conversation. Why be in community if you can't be in the fullness of who you are? Why be in community if you can't be the fullness of who you are? You see, what we do in community, and I hope you're starting to gather this in this moment, is that the nurturing environment that we are establishing with one another is actually becoming the model for the way that we show up in our homes and in our workplaces and in other social groups. That inner circle, that community gets to be a place where you have safety to test and learn and then go out in the fullness of who you are. It's a place where you can really establish your confidence in your changing and evolving self, in your remembering self, as you journey closer and closer into the truth of who you are, back to the core of your purpose. So I hope that as you've thought about these different examples of what can happen when we are building and strengthening community, some of the ways to do that, some of the things to avoid, some of the things to shift, some of the things to consider, that you have found yourself really reflecting on the communities that you're a part of today. Where are the places where you receive more than you give? Where are the places where you give a lot more than what you have capacity to share? Where are the places that need to have boundaries? Where are the places that you recognize you could be more honest? How are you able to be present in the moment with the people in your community? And what might it look like for you if you feel like you're not as present as you could be? What are some quick decisions that you can make to bring yourself back to a point of presence? One of the things that I've learned is that if there's something burning, especially, our phones or our the next appendage, right? It's saying like, I need to wrap this up. And so give me 2 minutes to do that and then finishing it so that then you can be present in the moment, right? I do the same thing with my children. If it's something that I know can wait, I put the phone down and I try to focus and give eye contact to them, which often can be hard because they want to be on their phones too, right? But the eye contact and the active listening lets them know, I hear you and you're important to me. It's the same thing we want in community from one another. And then this piece about being authentic, like showing up as our full selves and talking about the transformation and growth that we're going in. I hope that you are in a stage of growth and transformation. I hope that you are. I hope that you are remembering who you are. I hope that you're standing more boldly in who God created you to be. I hope that you are. Because we need that version of you and we need that evolving version of you. And for those of you who are like, I just came through transformation. I know, but you know that there's cycles here, right? Like there's more. There's more to do. There's more for us to be. There's more that we learn about ourselves. And so I just want to really encourage you to ensure that you are showing up in the fullness of who you are, because if you are not able to do it in your community, where will you? So as we wrap up for today, I just want to encourage you to reflect on the community that you have today. I always am going to recommend that you take things back to God. And so perhaps even exploring in the communities that you're a part of, what's God's greatest desire for who you are and how you show up? What are the things that God would give you insight into that are needed in the community? What are the places that you feel energized to show up? Perhaps it's not even about all the gifting that you have or what your professional skills and talents are, or, the fact that you are maybe the comedian of the group. But what are the other things that you desire to contribute? What might benefit the community that is missing today? These are opportunities for us to really grow and stretch ourselves on behalf of our own development and knowing that we can give some immediate value to the people that we love. Community is our way forward. No matter what it is that we might think, we were going to need each other. Our healing is dependent on each other. The future of society is connected to being in community with one another, if you know, you know. And so it is so important, especially in times like this, that we are not self-isolating. And that isolation, I don't mean when you are pulled away for a season to work on something that you're developing. I call that the cave season, right? I don't mean the cave season. I mean truly pulling yourself fully out of community with one another. We need each other. We need safe spaces. And some of you might find, like, when I talk about community, that you're thinking of smaller pods of community. That's okay. Whatever the structure is for you, as long as it aligns with what it is that you are there to give and receive, all good. The pods are great. A big community that nurtures and loves on each other is great. But establish some expectations that you have of yourself and how you'll hold yourself accountable, and begin to have the conversations that help strengthen community, because you will need each other. We will need each other. Before I close out today, I just want to go back to something that I did earlier in the month of March. So for those of you that are unaware, I hosted a healing for Black women. This is a really precious event, and God basically downloaded a healing transmission for me for Black women. And it was pivotal for me because as I host spaces like the Healing Crusade and the Healing Capsules and all of the different types of work that I do, I'm very clear that I am called to support people, humanity. And when I asked God why specifically Black women, which was kind of a loaded question because I do understand who God has called us to be in this season and the seasons to come. But I asked God, and God was very clear that there was work for us to do, not just in healing ourselves, but in healing our relationship one to another. What God relayed to me was so beautiful, and it was also very deep. In the way that we have supported communities outside of our own, we've always poured as much as we possibly could. And we find ourselves often in a place of deficit because we have not been filling ourselves back up. And to add to that, over time, for a multitude of reasons, our relationships one to another have been strained. And so God is calling us back to being in relationship with one another. And that does not mean that your relationship should only be with Black women. That's not what I'm saying. But God is clearly saying that we need to heal the connection, the trust that we have one to another. That it's important for us to recognize the power of the relationship. And let me be clear, when I'm talking about the power of the relationship, I'm not even talking about outside of the circle. I'm talking about our ability to help one another heal. Our ability to help one another feel seen. Our ability to help one another understand and know where we are in the journey in relationship to one another. It's incredibly important work for us to do because we are a part of the healing and the transformation that happens in the world. We are loved and favored. We are a part of God's divine plan. And it's not for us to judge how and the ways in which that God relays that plan, but it is for us to understand that when God calls us to healing, that there's a reason behind why it matters and why it matters that it happens now. So for those of you who are Black women, who support Black women in the work that you do, or in circles with Black women community, I want to encourage you to invite them to explore Black Women Heal. On my YouTube page, the transmission for the healing is there. It is free and it is open for anyone to hear. My desire is that we get it in the hands of as many Black women as possible, and that whenever and wherever possible, that we gather together to hear the healing transmission, because when we heal as a collective, when we heal in community with one another, it deepens the impact of our healing. In the moment, for those who are witnessing one another going through it, as well as the impact external to us as we complete that healing journey. This healing transmission was incredible. And the way in which it flowed through me was absolutely divine. It was so beautiful. It captured some of the background of why we needed to go through the healing experience. So many of reasons and so many experiences that we have even beyond this lifetime. And so as we prepare ourselves in the conversation today to be deeper in community with one another, it's important for us to recognize that there might be some reasons why we resist being in community together. There may be some reasons why it feels difficult to trust one another. There may be some reasons why we wonder if even being in community is for us. But the truth of the matter is, there's a reason that this is a divine edict from God for us to both be in community and to heal. And for those of you who are not Black women, but who are like, I want to heal too, I get it. I know you do. And we all do. We all do, and we all should. And there are great opportunities for that healing work to happen. The Healing Crusade is certainly one. And I'm happy to share other resources with you as well. And I'm sure that as time goes on, there will be more places and spaces where we can provide that. As a matter of fact, I'll have a healing capsule coming up next quarter. And so there will be an opportunity to experience a healing capsule that is open for all people, male and female, and, all different races and nationalities, really open to everyone. But for today, I wanted to make sure that I reference Black Women Heal and encourage you to listen to it if you have not had the opportunity to today. And if you have people that you support that would benefit from it, send it to them. One of the things that we've done for some of our community is make recommendations on how to best use this healing. And I love the idea of taking it into book club, taking it into Bible study, sitting with small groups, inviting your sisters over for a sister night, and listening to the healing transmission. And one of the ways that I see it happening in a way that's really impactful is people sharing their intentions for the healing session in the beginning, talking about some of the things that have been coming up for them, sharing some of the truth of what their experiences have been in circles with other Black women or women in general. What are some of the things that have created the divide for us, right? And then you'll hear me talk through some of those in the transmission, but you can have a conversation about it in advance. And then you're leaving that in the center for it to be healed. I love that in so many of the circles, Black women circles and women's circles in general that I'm a part of, that many of them have started off with conversations around what it looks like to be able to trust one another. That's the kind of honesty that we talked about in this episode. Having those conversations gives us the groundwork to say, there's some things, some behaviors, some experiences that leave something to be desired. And I want to make sure that this place is safe and that we build in a way that is beneficial for all of us. And that is so incredibly important. And that will be critical for the community building that we are to build in whatever way, shape, or form the divine leads us. That's all the time that we have for today's episode, but I look forward to seeing you back next week on the Anika Apple podcast. As always, I wish you peace and blessings.